Okay guys, welcome everybody. We're going to get started here, 7:01. My name's Kruger, if you don't know that. And so let me just start off by welcome. Thanks for being here. I am going to talk to the students first. You guys got your blue forms. You know you have some requirements for your classes. Flip the form over, take notes tonight. Make sure before you leave tonight you get my magic stamp, okay? So that your teachers know you were actually here. For everybody, we are recording this tonight. And for students, that's not so that you can leave early and watch the recording. That's so that if you need to brush up your notes and you need a refresher, you can go on to our spark@phs.com website and see it. It should probably be posted in a day or two. Mindy does a good job about getting that up. So welcome, and let's see, the stamp, that's good. I'm also going to tell students this, not only for you, but maybe you have some friends that have not met the requirement yet. This is our last MCAFE for this year. We have a special presentation tomorrow night. Surfrider, it's a coastal ecology group. They're going to be here. They're going to, a lady from UC Davis and the Marine Biology Lab is going to be here to talk about what she does and her research. That'll be kind of a shorter presentation, and then we're also going to watch on the dome the Coral Reef movie from the Academy of Science. So if people need a last-minute help save me, you can come to that tomorrow night. There is limited seating, and you do have to sign up in advance. This is a Surfrider event, and they make the rules. We're just providing the venue. So to sign up, you have to go to our STEM Google Classroom, and on there is posted the link. Just go to the link. It'll take you 2 minutes to fill out the form, and you're good to go. So pass that around. It's in the bulletin. I put it on the STEM Google Classroom. Just a kind of a last opportunity for people to get their requirement done. Okay? All right. Let's see here. What else do we have? I said we were recording. That's good. We actually do have one more event this year. I have a planetarium show 2 weeks from tonight. That'll be our last planetarium show. May we take off because we have a lot of things going on with graduation and things like that. And then we'll be back again, hopefully, in the fall, in September. So, and we'll probably post the new schedule for those of you who keep track of this on our website sometime in August. Okay? All right, format for tonight. Same format. We're going to have our speaker speak and do a little QA. When they're done, we have brownies made by culinary department out there. Please limit it 1 per person. We've got, I think, 80 of them. We're going to have close to 8 people here tonight. And some water and some decaf coffee. While that is happening, our guests will hang around for a little bit to ask maybe some individual questions that people didn't want to ask to the group, although I encourage people to ask questions in the group because everybody's thinking it also. All right. Let's get started here. Dr. David McCuan, professor of political science, joined the faculty of Sonoma State University during the historic California recall election period in the fall of 2003. His scholarly expertise rests in two broad areas: American politics and international relations. His doctorate was granted from the University of California, Riverside in 2002. His teaching responsibilities include courses in both international and national politics, international security, and terrorism. One of these days we got to get you here to talk about that. And state and local politics, campaigns and elections, and political behavior. In the area of elections, Dr. McCuan's research focused on general impact of ballot measures, direct democracy in the state of California and across the nation. Due to Professor McCuan's adherence to a policy of strict bipartisanship, his commentary and analysis is sought out multiple media outlets. I first, years ago, heard Dr. McCuan on KCBS. I still listen to AM radio. Does anybody listen to AM radio? KCBS and also KGO radio. And brought me to my attention. He's been New York Times, CNN, ABC, CNBC, Fox, MSNBC. I could go on here. There's a huge list. Okay, but the gist is we're super happy to have him here and lucky to have him here. This is actually your third visit, and so without further ado.
Hi, nice to see you all. Nice to see so many returnees. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come hear about politics, which is not usually high on everyone's list. Obviously, these are incredible times. There's so much going on every moment of the day. Kurt wanted me to talk a little bit about the work that I do with the media. Most of what you see or hear when you're throwing things at the TV based on something I said, or getting a hold of the president, asking them to relieve me of my duties, this happens every day, so it's fine. But most of what I do is like an iceberg. It's under the surface. I work with reporters every day, covering politics, talking about things that are going on. In the next 24 to 72 hours, you're going to hear a lot about Eric Swalwell and his relationship with female staffers. So there's going to be a lot going on relative to that as the race is kind of solidifying. It's unsavory, I get it, but I just give you an idea of the types of things that I work with the press on about what's forthcoming. So as we headed to that 5 p.m. deadline yesterday, 4 p.m. deadline on our run, doing a lot of work with reporters and their editors trying to understand the laws of war. I do teach a course on terrorism. I'm teaching that course right now. We just happened to start suicide bombers yesterday, lifting topic. And we spent 2 weeks on female suicide bombers, on FSBs, and how women are different than bombers. It's an intense class. I take students into a bombing in Jerusalem 27 seconds after it happens. So you have to give fair warning to people. We do a lot of different things. We study terror groups, we adopt a terror group of 2 students, and then they plan an attack and we post it on the web. What we do is we try to understand or get in the minds of extremists. And you know people like this. What I mean by that is you know people who have extreme behaviors. You know, there are some people that climb up onto rocks 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet in the air, and they don't have anything underneath them or any safety equipment. And if they miss something that happens, guess what happens? They're gone. That's an extreme behavior. You know people, or I've heard of people who run for 24 hours a day. What the hell? You know, or people who do extreme things. So we often read materials about what leads people to carry extreme attitudes and what does that look like. And we're certainly in a place today where the politics of extremism is hugely important. For example, I'm part of a group that reviewed the arrest files, and case files of those arrested in January 6th. My responsibility were people that were kind of Colorado West, including people from California, including people from Sonoma County. We engaged in this process of outing who was part of these groups. That was published in the Press Democrat a year after January 6, 2021. It was published January 6th and 7th of 2022. The idea was to let people know who their neighbors are. You decide if you want to go to those businesses or not. It's up to you. It's a free country. But the idea was to let people know the vast elements of extremism. And that obviously colors our politics for today. My classes are always open. You're always welcome to come. Just give me a heads up, send me an email, and I'll get you a parking pass. That way we pay for it, you don't pay for it. But anyone is welcome to do that. I will be teaching a course on the elections in the fall that is open to the community, and it will be partnered with our Osher Lifelong Learning and my undergraduate students, where we work together for 6 weeks. We'll do some things that cover the election and what's happening, because this is the mother of all midterms. This election is so important. A lot of the work that I do is overseas. And then I just want to mention one thing that's going on. I hear a lot from the Chinese consul, the Japanese consul, and the Korean consul in San Francisco. Those consulate generals are interested in how California is different, what is happening with Governor Newsom, who clearly wants to run for president, but they're interested in the West Coast and how it's different. They are looking for places and inroads to have relationships with communities that are different than Trump. And here's the curious thing. If you know anything about your world history, you know that those three nations do not get along, and historically do not get along. And all of their consul generals have asked me the same questions. It's like they had the same questions set. That doesn't go up to embassies, that doesn't go up to heads of state, but it is something they're coordinating, looking for ways to engage people in the United States for what's coming next, and looking for inroads there. This is not low-level espionage. That's not what this is. What this is ways of finding where we have some commonality and can do some things moving forward, whether that's about the use of force, or about energy, or about trade. And they're particularly interested in this on the West Coast. The way this can help, as an example, is if the San Francisco Giants were to sign a couple of Japanese or Korean ball players, a few more, they would see what's happened in LA. LA trade and LA visits by people from Japan or from Korea is up over 70%. Buoying those economies and resisting things and encouraging. The same thing could happen in Seattle with the Mariners, the same thing could happen with Oakland or with San Francisco. But the idea is to give you some attention that there's a lot of people paying attention to what is happening here that is different about this space. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as well as we go through this. All right, I love what I do, as you can already tell. And so I'm gonna go fast, there's lots of stuff. I'm happy to send you the slides. I put 2 of them per page onto a PDF. I can give them to Kurt, but I'm also welcome. I'll happy to send them to you so you can look at them. I try to put links in, and I'll show you examples of that where you can like click on something and go right out to it. That way you know the sourcing, you know what's going on, and again you can kind of get your own, become your own person, if you will, and your own analyst as we move forward. So midterm elections are different. They're just really different, but there are only a few variables you need to pay attention to. Presidential popularity, right? Some measure of the economy, like gas, okay, right? So presidential approval, some measure of the economy, and then some other barometer about the direction or general tenor of how people are feeling about our politics. So you could do like a approval, disapproval of the president. You could do, is the country headed in the right or wrong direction? And then you could do like the price of gas. The University of Michigan measures this as a consumer sentiment model. It's like a measure of how people are feeling about their pocketbooks or how they're feeling across the dinner table. And lo and behold, guess how people are feeling? Scared, antsy, uncertain, right? And then there are differences for each party. For the Democrats, for Sleepy Joe Biden, if they were at 42% or less, that number signals a real problem. But for Trump and the Republicans, the number is much, much lower than 42% or 41% as like a barometer of in or out. Why? Why would the number for Republicans, and particularly Donald Trump, be lower or less?
He's not human.
Okay. I'm going to say that he's resistant to all of the laws of political science that we've learned over the years. He's somewhat resistant to this. He's superhuman. Okay? Yes, what do you got?
He kind of branded himself as America first, but he also fought a war in Iran kind of just out of nowhere, and also invaded Venezuela out of nowhere.
So the people who are with him, this MAGA base, are with him in a big way, and they stay with him. Democrats scatter all over the place, right? How many Democrats running for governor? Well, all of them. Right? How many Republicans? 2, right? So Republicans stay closer to party, and they stay closer to him. But his magic number is less than 38, so like 36. Based on what you look at now, his number is 29 to 33. What that number translates to, a number of House seats, is plus 40 to the other party. That is unusual. And it puts plus 7 to plus 9 into the Senate, where Democrats are structurally disadvantaged, as you will see, to gain the Senate before 2032. So he is both the person that giveth and taketh away, if you want to think of it that way. And he's not on the ballot, but he's really on the ballot, as evidenced by everything going on. So you have these kind of things going on. You have this approval, disapproval number. You have the price of gas. And is the war popular or not? It is not. Those three things wrap together, placing weight or magnet on the in-party. And the in-party owns everything. And is this his first midterm election or his second midterm election? It's his second midterm election. And historically, that is the greatest loss that a president or any party faces. So they have a trifecta of doom in terms of owning everything. They have this approval, disapproval problem, this war problem, this gas problem, which says that the number that's conservative at minus 40 seats is probably higher than that. But not much higher, but it's probably closer to minus 50. This isn't my model or a political science model. It's a model that's shared by multiple people. Because science is only science if it's replicable. Okay? Otherwise, it's cold water fusion in North Korea. It just is not. Okay? So you have to have replicable science. It has to be happening. And that's what we'll look at. And have your questions, because there's going to be a lot. Okay. So midterm elections, just as a barometer, midterm elections are non-presidential year elections. Sometimes people forget that. And what happens down ballot is really important. There are more Republican legislatures or more Republican states in control than Democratic states in control. There are more Republican governors than Democratic governors. And remember, the Republicans own all things in the government. So as a result of this, if they're here, what is logically going to happen? They're going to go down. The question is, can we be better than they're just going to go down? And that's what we try to look at tonight. All right, the big picture. Midterms work in this context of something, of a lot of social change, right? A lot of diversity, a lot of things that are clashing. ICE, gender identity, class. Class is more important than race. But class and race and being a woman are really problematic. Because people don't like to vote for those things. All right? We don't talk about this stuff except at the dinner table at Thanksgiving. But other than that, these things matter. So gender identity is important, class is important, and race is important. But they have different weights in different places. And there's this thing called the Gallup generic ballot test, which is generally, would you vote for a Democrat or a Republican? Well, generally, where are people at right now? Democrat. And before the war, 5-6 weeks ago, Democrats were +1. Guess what they are now? Yeah, +6, +7. But that's where they were in 2018. Okay? That's where they were in 2006 as the out party. So they're right where they should be historically as the out party. And they weren't in that place. Why weren't they in that place before the war? Because what's the Democrats' answer to affordability? Do something. Yeah, do something, right? And who's carrying that message for the Democrats? No one. Okay? So Democrats have an identity crisis they haven't solved since November 2024. Good thing they have Donald Trump, who solves their identity crisis for them. But you have to have more than being no. You have to have something that you're for. So this affordability problem is magnified by the war and continues and lingers. So in 2 weeks, if we don't go back to war, and we still keep some semblance of a ceasefire and start to negotiate, nonetheless, affordability remains as a real drag on what's going on. And that will not change. Because remember those things about measuring the economy and measuring the general, are we headed in the right or wrong direction, and measuring presidential approval, disapproval, presidential sentiment. You measure those things July 4th, when we turn 250 years old. And then you measure them again in Labor Day. Those three variables at those two dates have a 94% probability of predicting what will happen in November.
Wow.
It ain't rocket science, man. They're that powerful. They're that powerful with all but 3 elections. One of those elections happened to be 1998. Many people will remember, but not everybody. That's Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It actually helped the in-party, okay? But usually, that's not what happens on the in-party. The in-party always loses in the midterm. How long has that been a consistent view? Since the Civil War. Okay, so we don't have a lot of rules, and he upsets and blows up a lot of them, clearly. But nonetheless, midterm loss for the in-party is really strong. We'll see that in a second. All right. Okay, so there is this thing about a red wave or a blue wave. Do you know how much time it takes to create that green? This is not an easy thing. All right? But if you look at this, what you do is you try to track the generic poll, right? And if you track, this is from 2022, as you track the generic poll, you should see as we get closer to the election what should happen to the generic ballot stats. It should close, right? It should close. What's not in there are things like a war or recession or events. You have to keep that in mind. But the general sentiment is it should close. And right now it's opening up. We're a long ways away, right? We're just less than 30 weeks. So this is how we explain national midterm outcomes. I underlined the most important component. For those of you that are taking notes, you need to understand the difference between these 2 things. Is it a referendum on the president, or is it a backlash? That is the fundamental question of a midterm and this kind of rule of what happens. Referendum or backlash? The strong research, the best research says it's a backlash. All right? So what you're seeing is a backlash. A backlash in November, presumably to what happened in February, March, April, the war, gas prices. That's called retrospective voting, looking back. It's very powerful in a predictive sense. But candidates like to talk about prospective vision, what they want to do, right? What I just talked about, Democrats needing an answer to affordability. So there's a retrospective versus prospective kind of clash that goes on in voters' minds. Retrospective, more powerful analytically, in a predictable sense, in a statistical sense. But that is about a backlash against the president, not a referendum, which is important because Democrats will want to talk about it as a referendum, not as a backlash. Because a referendum says we have to go our way if you're the winning party in that coalition. A backlash says they did something wrong and can you learn from that? Big, big difference. There are other examples, right? Since the Republicans own everything, there should be a reversion back to some type of balance. There's a YouGov poll, a study that was released, I think it was last week, that surveyed voter sentiment from 2006 through the end of 2024. It's a huge survey. There's like 60,000 respondents in it. It's massive. And what it found is Democrats are no longer the majority party. The biggest party and biggest growth has been where? Yes. Purple people. Okay? And I always say this to you when I come here, right? You're in the room, right? You're socially liberal and economically conservative. And you are kind of both sides, and you're reasonable. And in political science, the term for that is liar. Okay? The reason it's that is because when we start to ask people about like God, guns, gays and lesbians, abortion, they color themselves. They move into directions. So the actual number of squishy people is actually quite small. It's between 104 and 108,000 nationwide. And when you think about a presidential election, that means that those squishy people are the ones that tilt the scale. Combined with the movement of Latinos or African American males away from Democrats to the Republican Party in 2024. Right? Just to give some idea about this. There's also things like the action of strategic politicians. Sorry, I should correct that there. This is called strategic retirement. There are 57 members that have strategically retired. More Republicans than Democrats. Democratic consultants like to say, oh, there are more Democrats strategically retiring than ever before. Sure, but there's a heck of a lot of Republicans that are retiring. Why do you think they are retiring? Yeah, the strategic retirement hypothesis has a lot of weight. It says if you think things are not going your way, what do? You do that a lot. And that's what we're seeing now. So strategic retirements is a good barometer of inside what's happening. There are other components to this, but this is largely the pattern for most of the 19th and 20th into the 20th and into the current century. Right? So it's very robust in terms of what's going on. Then there's the question of what is average midterm presidential loss, average number of seats. And remember, this is the second midterm. So what do you think the average midterm loss is the second midterm? Higher than the first midterm, right? Indeed, it's almost double what you see. So it's a big number. Right? Okay, so here's an example that shows you that I'm just not lying. Okay? This is what happens in midterm elections. You're paying attention to this part here, showing you like in party, out, and then boom, they lost. Look what happened, right? Over various elections. Look at that, 1994 and 1998. Does anyone remember what 1994 was? This is Newt Gingrich when he comes in, a contract with America, and they take over. My great colleague, Jack Pitney, nobody doesn't want this on the web. Jack wrote a book right before the election, published in October 1994, that was called The Permanent Minority, about how Republicans will never win and ever become the majority party in Congress, ever. And then, of course, a month later, things changed. Nonetheless, it wasn't a big change, to Jack's credit. But look what happened there in 98. But it's very rare where the midterm results favor the in-party. Very rare. There's a link there. We can look at this. Here's what our model, for example, predicted in the past. So here's presidential approval. House popular vote. It would favor one side or the other, and what would happen to GOP net seats. As you look at this statistically, notice what we're doing. We're taking presidential approval, we're taking the House popular vote, okay? Taking that as a mean, and then we're taking GOP seats. We can take GOP or down, we don't have to, but we pick GOP. We pick GOP because they were more likely to be in the minority during this period. And look what happens. If your approval is 42%, it can favor Republicans. Why? Because Republicans stay closer to the party. They don't flee as much as Democrats do. Because there's the BSers, there's others, the Bidens, the Clintons, the wide swath of the party. Republicans aren't like that. But look what happens. GOP net seats, minus 40. Democrats get about 10% more of the vote if it's at 44%. And where is he at? The low 30s on a good day. So this says that there's some type of wave effect that builds, tempered by who he is in that MAGA base. We got to kind of build that into the model a little bit. All right? Average midterm loss the second time is 33 seats. That's a really, really big number because we don't see it lurching to and fro. So if Democrats, we think, are picking up 40 to 50. The model this morning is like 44 seats. Okay? That is huge because usually we're not seeing these big swings like this. We're seeing much smaller swings. Why? Because there are safer Republican districts. There are districts where Republicans are winning, in districts maybe they shouldn't be winning, or have been drawn differently because of those people. That kind of thing going on. Right? Here's an example of why this matters. I know this area is different, and this is in Jackson, Mississippi, this is in like Orlando, Florida, or someplace in Georgia. But the battleground for Democrats to win the House is in Santa Rosa. Remember, Democrats, remember that Prop 50 thing that everybody voted on or didn't vote, or whether we had to steal your ballots to make sure that they're valid or all that kind of thing. It's going to get 5 seats, so offset Texas. The only way you offset Texas with those 5 and 5, or the only way you get to a majority in the House, is by winning those 5 seats. And where are those seats? Huffman's district, the Wolf's old district. Where McGuire's running, part of the Wolf's old district, Kevin Kiley and others. And then you move to the Central Valley, then you move down the River Line, and then you move down to San Diego. But it starts here. You got to lock in these 2 to get to those 3. Literally, to offset Texas or to offset the other things that are going on, Santa matters in a huge way relative to starting what's happening in terms of making news fun. I explain this to journalists every day, all right? If you would say, today, interview this morning, explaining it to the journalists about what to watch moving forward, New York Times, all this, explain to them what is happening and why California is so important in terms of setting forth what will happen across the country. The other place is upstate New York. Anyone been to the Hudson River Valley? Right? You know, a lot of Republicans in that area, right? Different areas of Long Island. It's the battlegrounds of New York, upstate New York, and California that determine what's going to happen in November with the House, or the extent of Democrats or the House party. If they win 3 of 5 or 4 of 5, they only have an okay night. But if they win 5 and they win in upstate New York, you're talking about something that hits the upper end of the tail, 40 to 50 and so on. So it's really important. Why? Because look at the districts that Kamala Harris won that are represented by Republicans. The late Doug Malfa, right? The newly independent Kevin Kiley, Ken Calvert, Darrell Ice to the car thief. And then the rest of them are scattered across, like in upstate New York. Like all. So this just gives you an idea. If you looked at the opposite of this, Democratic seats in places that Trump won, all right? Well, Michigan and Maine, you might say Maine is a blue state. Michigan's a battleground state, but then you start to see a lot of states that are safe for one party or another. Like Ohio, the most northern southern state, if you catch the drift. Okay. Like Texas, or some elements of rural Washington. So there are different places and different bases going on for each party. That's all you can do so far. And then there's that strategic retirement thing. So here's an example. You can click on that, and it would take you out to an article on strategic retirements. Okay? The latest is going. There's a number of people that are strategically retiring, almost 70. This is as of today. You can look at this at the Brookings Institution's kind of official website. It's inching higher and higher, and it's now just exceeded, Saturday or Sunday, what we saw in 2018. So what's that tell you about the likelihood on your Kalshi app of betting that the House will flip? It's about even money, so don't even make a bet. It's a sure thing. And this is something to pay attention to. What you're not interested in are the deep colors, deep red and deep blue. What you're really interested in is pink. Pink are places that Donald Trump barely won. So those might be, you might think of in the discipline it's called marginal districts. Marginal. They're marginally one side or another. So light blue is marginally Democratic and pink is marginally Republican. And if you start to add this up across America, you see a lot of blue and a lot of red, but what you see is a lot of pink. A lot of pink. Which means that Republicans are overexposed. Before we get to gas prices, before we get to the war. So if they're overexposed, mathematically what should happen? They should revert to the mean. Okay? Again, not rocket science, that's what should happen. I'm going to show you some of these districts, keeping in mind with the recent Olympics. Here it is. So, which gold district is a bellwether of what will happen on election night in November? North Carolina CD1. That is the battleground district. There's a lot of shenanigans going on with what that district looks like in terms of the lines, who lives there and where, and it is the principal battleground. It is the gold standard. So if Democrats want to take the House, what do they have to do? If Republicans want to hold the House, what do they have to do? You've got to hold CD1. So a lot of money will fly into CD1. Texas CD34 is a silver medalist, which is kind of unusual, because if you've ever been to Texas, you know it's clearly what? Deeply red, right? Democrats have this dream that someday they will win it, right? Sure, if you've ever been to Texas, you realize that is not the case. But there is a bellwether district there, and then there's Colorado CD8 as a bronze medalist. These are early indicators. So what's happening in these districts in terms of money, advertising, votes, gives us a barometer of what should happen. There are other districts, the top 20 targets. What we do is we take the 20 targets for the Dems and the Republicans, we try to put them together and get some semblance. As his popularity moves below 36%, one of the key things, as his popularity moves below 36%, the number of marginal districts, districts that are targets or could be could go one way or another, opens from 20 to 30 to 47. It moves from 36 to 34. At 33, the number of marginals is in the 60s. The map gets wider. And when the map gets wider, Democrats aren't great with their money anyways, but they get more money and they spend more across a number of races. Okay? But they have more targets. And that opens up targets in the Senate side as well. So there's an element of this that happens as presidential popularity goes down. The out party's potential targets gets wider. Right? You think about it, it makes a great deal of sense because there are more marginal voters that all of a sudden appear. All of these districts. Here's an example of what's going on in the Senate. On the left is the Democrats' pipe dream of their targets. Notice what they call Texas a power build, which is like, we're not going to win, but Tallarico gets us close. Okay? It's a power build. And we might do okay in Iowa, and Democrats believe they're going to do better in Iowa, and they always have this dream that they're going to win in Iowa. And the Senate Leadership Fund, which is the Republican leadership fund of John Thune and others, decided they're going to spend $21 million on TV buys in Iowa earlier this week. California standards, that's not a lot of money. By Iowa standards, it's huge. So and this is what happens, for example, in the Texas Republican primary. By not coming out and endorsing Cornyn or his opponent, I forget his name, by not endorsing either one of them, it forces the Republicans to spend $200 to $250 million between now and November. That's $250 million they can't spend in Ohio or in Pennsylvania or in other states because they have to spend it there to hold off Tallarico and hold off Democrats in that area. So what's interesting are the battlegrounds here. Okay, Minnesota, Democratic state, but not as strongly as you might think. Right? Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, 3 battleground states that in the presidential election have gone with the winner every election since 1982, all together. They're the bellwethers right here. What do you got, brother?
What does the white states represent?
These are states that do not have Senate races this year. There are 35 Senate races this year, and the white ones aren't up. There aren't people running in those states. There's only a third of the Senate's running. So that's class. There's class 1, 2, and 3. I think this is class 3 this time, so I think they're class 1. In that particular election. And then if you look at the blue, you see, okay, Democrats won this state, and won this state, and this state. Okay. Nevada, how did it go last time? It went red. Okay, it went red. So Democrats are going to spend a lot of money there. That's Colorado. They're going to spend a lot of money there. They're going to try to spend a lot of money here, but they're going to spill over to other states. Right? As Missouri goes, so goes the Republican Party. So this is not a power bill. This is like wishful thinking. Yeah,
talking about the spending, I remember hearing maybe in New York Times that the Republicans put money behind Jasmine Crockett.
There was some money that did flow.
Because they wanted, she'd be easier to beat.
She'd be easier to beat than Tallarico.
Right.
Yeah, she'd be easier to beat.
That's why.
But she also concentrated on African American areas and some key suburbs of big cities like outside Dallas and Houston that she didn't have a chance to win. So strategically, she also made
How often does that happen that they support the opposition in hopes they get
to get to a place where you get the weaker candidate? It's as old and long running as campaign finance has been done. Absolutely. And I mean at the high school level. Yeah, you want to face the weaker person. So it has been going on for some time. What is better is we have better tools to track it, but there's also more hidden money. That's a real difference now. About $1 in $100 was hidden or not accounted for in the 2010 to 2012 period. Okay, it was like, this is right at Citizens United. It's what we call dark money, but it's existed for a long time. But it's money that flows into a campaign for some group called like All That Is Good and Right Under the Sun, right? But it's funded by a nonprofit. That's an LLC that's scattered across several different mailboxes. You can never know who those donors are. So far for 2026, we're just getting into this. It's 20%. It's 20 cents on the dollar. It's gone from 1 in 100 to 20 cents on the dollar. There's a lot of dark money out there. So your question is insightful because of how deep it's going and how insidious. And the big move is not by Republicans, because they've been doing this a lot longer, by new Democratic groups, particularly new Democratic left groups.
About time they start playing dirty.
Yeah, it is. They're slow. They're slow. They're slow to the game. Right? Okay, so this is what essentially it looks like. This is from my colleague Larry Sabato. You can click on this and it'll take you right to Larry Sabato's group. It gives you an idea where the battlegrounds are. Again, there are a lot of places to look up. There's an election. And here's kind of the wild card of this. Notice that nobody likes Congress. And this is from 2022. I don't have a new one from Gallup. There's been some changes with what Gallup is doing, Gallup.com. What do you think the approval of Congress is right now? 4. Yeah, it is single digits. You're not wrong. It's single digits. It's literally half of this. It's about 9%. And that's on a good day. That's on Monday before they get together on Tuesday.
What was a peak in 2001, 2002 because of 9/11?
You got it. You nailed it. Yeah, that's exactly right. Kind of a temporary rally around the flag. Artificial in some ways. And we tracked this all the way back to like 1916, pre-polling. There's some other elements that we can use to track it and then carry it forward in the modern polling area. Take 30s moving forward, maybe 40. It's always been pretty dismal. But it is punctuated sometimes by war or rally around the flag. Okay, so here's the slide that matters most. There's 2 slides back to back. I can tell you. President's party, majority party in the House, are they the same or not? Approval of Congress. Well, I just showed you the approval of Congress is low. And you know that. And that also translates into a net loss or gain. So there aren't a lot of variables that we need to kind of determine direction and then what happens. And there are very few marginal districts, but as the president's popularity goes down, marginal districts expand. There are more of them. As the price of oil goes down, the stock market goes up, as evidenced by today. Right? Gallup is consistently showed below average numbers for Trump. There's a bunch of different averages, and averaging this is Silver Bulletin, which is on Substack. Elliot Morris is on Substack. You've seen him on TV. His stuff is excellent. But Gallup consistently, and is now no longer going to measure presidential election forecasting. They're no longer doing this. Because ever since Donald Trump came onto the political scene in 2015, they have consistently underestimated his support. And they finally have thrown in the towel. Because everyone got to do it. Now, he's not on the ballot in 2028, so it's a curious thing to announce that you're doing this. But they have thrown in the towel. They're measuring other things. Okay. Yeah, this is the link to it if you want to read about it. Gallup announced this February. Okay. They tracked presidential approval forever. But they're always missing with Donald Trump. So something's wrong about their model, right? And they finally have said, okay, we're not good at this. Which is ironic because they're the first polling operation. You can read a lot about this. I've given you some links about this. It's just kind of changing what we're doing. All right. So, here's a great thing going on. Yes, sir.
Maybe people are lying more about Trump than ever before compared to other candidates in the past.
It's socially unacceptable to be a Trump supporter. Socially unacceptable. especially if you are a college-educated white woman. And 46% of them voted for Donald Trump.
Yes.
But you know what estimates on our model were? 33% and 41%. 33% in 2016, 41% 2024, and in science, being off by that much is called luck. You guys are never coming back from it. I mean, it's a big miss. And it's partly because we got to build that in. That's why the component for Biden at 41, 42, a Democrat starts to shed or gets more vulnerability. It's tighter, harder, stronger, better, whatever, for Trump at 36. He has a different tipping point because he holds on to that period of time. Okay, so Democrats are less positive about their own party, but they're motivated to vote. So they want to vote. They just are unsure it's going to, which kind of sums up a lot of Democrats. Okay? I'm kidding. Republican and independent men, young men are likely to skip because they don't vote in midterms. Especially, sorry, you young people. As a college professor, this really pains me. I mean, come on. They don't vote. Who votes early and often in midterm elections?
Elderly.
Old money.
Yeah.
Right? Old money. What else is there to do? Right? Right. Pickleball and voting. And so.
Correct, sir.
Right? Nailed it. Right?
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. But Republicans are, this is what's happening to that 36%. Republicans are becoming a little disillusioned and shedding a little bit. So he doesn't have that enthusiasm factor. And then some of the marginal voters, like independent young men who are on Roblox or some gaming outlet like that, don't show up. And so that is a barometer of difference going on. I do my part to insult everyone. Okay, all right, so we're going to get some questions here in just a second. Let me show you a couple different things. Democrats are winning fewer counties, right? For a long time, right? Even in California. Check it out. Biden and Trump, she who will not be named. Right?
Right.
Woman, multiracial, Marxist from the Bay Area. I mean, what else?
Shoved on us without a.
Yeah. I mean, there's all. I mean, but you can see this as evidence by what happened. Trump flipped 10 counties in deeply blue California. Increased his vote share in 45. I gave you the things right there. She lost vote share in all but one of California's 58 counties. You know the one county she increased vote share? Alpine County, by 3 votes. So your vote does matter, okay? Especially if you live in Alpine County. Right? Yes, sir.
Were there more people voted in 2024 than 2020?
No.
Okay, so when you say it,
She got 1.8 million fewer votes
right, then Biden.
than Biden.
So that, because some people stayed home,
Yeah.
it looks like a bigger percentage,
Yeah.
but it's really not.
It's not.
in numbers.
Yeah, I mean, she does, you know, she defeats some handily, right?
Right,
It wasn't competitive, but he picked up vote share.
right.
And obviously that gives them an idea that, hey, we're
But that's,
competitive, we're
is that a
competitive.
really good measurement when people stay home?
Excellent. It's not. Or they cast a ballot, they roll off. They don't roll off at the bottom, they roll off at the top. Right? They vote on other things. Come on to this. All right? And here's why this matters. I'm going to show you these last 2 slides and their questions. Yeah, what do you got?
I don't know what vote share is.
Vote share would be the degree to which one candidate or one side gets a vote or not. Say Democrat or just a fancy way of saying Democratic percentage, Republican percentage, or candidate percentage or not. That's all. So the counties that the other she who will not be named won, and this other she who will not be named won, constitute 60% plus of the nation's GDP. Or in the paper we wrote, Democrats are more likely to live closer to a whole paycheck, a Whole Foods, and Republicans are likely to live closer to a Cracker Barrel. right? We know this intuitively. But it's also a driver. And here's one of the principal drivers and elements that we're seeing while we're fighting about whether you can go to college or whether the value of higher education exists or not. This is what's happening to presidential election rates by state bachelor's degree attainment. With the exception of New Mexico, if you go to college, you're more likely to obviously vote blue. But if you go less, college or less, and there's a lot of less than college. And what I mean by that is I have a lot of students that don't complete college. Because something comes along in the family, there's a tragedy, there's a need to work, something happens in their personal economic circumstances and they don't complete college. And those states tend to be more red states, less GDP, and more likely to be Trump and hold on to Trump. This is not to say that these aren't good jobs or anything like that, but that means in a state like Pennsylvania, and anyone been to Pennsylvania? There's like a college in every town, right? There's a college everywhere in Pennsylvania. But it's a state that, as you know, between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, what do they call that? Pennsylvania. Right?
What? Sorry, what?
They call it Pennsylvania.
Oh, no, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Because, or they call it Upper Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all these,
Right.
but the point here is that things are changing. This is a perennial battleground state. Ohio has a lot of colleges, but there's a lot of changes in the battle. So the battle over higher education is an important proxy of voting down the line. Because voting is a habit. Once you start voting, what do you end up doing? Voting again and voting again. Voting is a habit. If you don't have voting as a habit because you're working for a living, or you're showering after work, not before work, if you want to think of it that way, you are less likely to vote and develop the habit of voting, even if you have older forms of ID that are not required. Let me leave it there and take your questions. Thank you all very much. Hold on a second. Here, we'll do this little thing here. What do you got, bud?
Yeah, this is not related to midterms, this is related to the primary. Could you shed some light on the unusual situation California is in with two Republicans leading, and you've got 8 Democrats that some of them won't get out.
Right.
And we could end up with 1 or possibly 2 Republicans going to the general election in November.
Thank you for asking that. Almost one out of 2 California voters is registered as a Democrat. 47%. Okay? It's the highest blue number that we've seen since the last time the Republicans elected a statewide constitutional officer who was governor. Republicans have been out of state constitutional office, not just the governorship, treasurer, superintendent, since 2006, since Steve Poizner was elected insurance commissioner, because they have nominated people who have been too far to the right than the average California voter. So since that time, we've now moved to a place where almost 1 out of 2 voters in California are Democrats, blue. Republicans are about 1 in 4, but they've moved between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4. There's 25% right now. And the other number are no party preference voters, the liars, right? They're 22%, but they've moved back and forth with the Republicans. But what can you conclude about the no party preference of purple people in California? Are they more blue or more red? They're blue. They're more blue. The independents in Nevada are more red because they fled California, right? And so the independent vote moves in a direction. Those people are not as important in June in the primary in the top 2, but those no party preference voters, that's 1 out of 5, are really important in November. They tend to lean more blue. Blue people are coming out. I mean, look, Democrats, every Democrat is going to vote early and often in November. Why? Because they think like the sky is falling, okay, all across the country. So they'll pop out. Is Donald Trump popular in California?
No.
But he is popular amongst Republicans who matter in the June primary. So what he did, and there's the Republican convention this weekend in San Diego. So he gives Hilton a boost, moves Bianco down. He had a Supreme Court decision, the season about. Bianco is typical two-right conservative that Republicans have nominated over and over the last couple of decades and have lost. Trump wants to back a winner as much as anything else. He's known that since 2012, he wants to back a winner. Democrats are settling out into three people. And it's really Swalwell, Steyer, anyone not seen a Steyer commercial?
Oh, yeah.
And Katie Porter. California is one of only 17 states that's never had a woman governor. All right? I mean, even Virginia has a female governor. Right? But Katie has trouble breaking through for a variety of reasons. Steyer has more money than God, and Swalwell is gaining some momentum. So as I mentioned, the next 24 to 72 hours, what happens? Attack. So there's a settling out. So the likelihood of two Republicans moving forward is not great. The likelihood of one of them moving forward is, and that would presumably be Hilton. Against Swalwell or Steyer, and Katie Porter just can't quite find traction and says nothing about the single digit. And I'm a big admirer of Betty Yee. I know Betty Yee. She knows more about the budget than all of us combined. She'd be a fantastic technocrat, but I'm not sure she's got the panache to be governor. And so, and Matt Mahan this is a curious case. He's in the middle. He's a Chamber of Commerce Democrat. Nobody knows that he's mayor of San Jose, but there's an IE, a dark money independent expenditure campaign that's spending $35 million to raise his name recognition in LA together with Caruso. And he's moved from 3 to 4 or 5%. So he ain't gonna be in there either. But he's got a lot of money and resources, so that does give him a little bit of staying power. So the likelihood is you see a grouping of one of those Democrats coming out together with Hilton, while Bianco and Katie are probably on the outside.
You just mentioned, you started to mention Swalwell.
Swalwell.
Yeah, and this controversy.
Yeah, there's been a couple of articles online, but there will be more talking about his relationship with staffers in his office, female staffers. And there may be a bit of a insulating effect because of Trump.
Yeah.
It might not be as big a deal.
Yeah, right, we got
Yeah,
the water focus on.
Yeah. I mean, there's
the Constitution.
yeah, but the idea is that he's starting to surge out of that pack. I mean, you know, look, Steyer spent, I think, $25 million, and he made 2 points, right? And so there's going to be a lot of wrangling between those. Could Katie Porter thread that needle between them? I'm not quite sure. I don't quite see that. Because ballots go out in 26 days.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, absentees are out, man. 26 days. The election's less than 60 days. So it's really close. But the likelihood of that scenario.
So, well, are the top 6 Democrats going to be on that ballot?
So far, they're on that ballot because they're already sanctioned for that ballot.
Okay.
So what they could say is, I'm not running, I'm dropping out. I'll give you an example. I'm from Richmond. Tony Thurman's from Richmond, right? He doesn't have any cash on hand. He's like, no cash on hand. It's like less than $200,000. He doesn't have money. And so that is a problem. So he could say, I'm not running, but he's still going to appear on the ballot, so he'll still attract votes. Yeah, hi.
Hi. What is, if there's any research on the effect with the Epstein files and the ICE situation, is there data showing if that's actually affecting voting or not?
Thank you for that question. I did not put the link in here. Yes, there is. There's a guy named Elliot Morris, just Elliot Morris. And he's shown some of the effects of, say, the excesses of ICE in Minnesota, killing of 2 Americans, Adams ICE, the effect of that on even base Republicans, MAGA supporters like, man, this is a little too far. And that affects the approval number. And that affects, it's already happening with Democrats, but where it's lingering is not with base Republicans, MAGA Republicans, it's lingering with independents. And independent men and women, not just independent women. And that's where it had some effect. The Epstein file saga is not going to end anytime soon. It will continue. There is more evidence and there are more files. And you know, what you don't see is his name is mentioned a million times.
Yeah, right. It's kind of a wag the dog.
Yeah, so
yeah.
that thing's going to exist and continue. Right. And it has effect. It has a dragging effect. Right. But after a while, there's a saturation effect too. What I mean by that is you're horrible, you're horrible, you're horrible. Why are you calling her horrible? Why are you calling her horrible? Each additional dollar or exposure point lends less than one whole vote to it. It's a diminishing marginal utility. Hi.
I think somebody over there.
Oh, okay, all right.
Mine was just more of a general question. It's been bugging me for years. Why do the Democrats not get out of their own way? It seems like they try to please everybody and therefore please nobody, where the Republicans have a very narrow idea of what they want to do and they get their people on board.
They're more disciplined.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're more disciplined. And Democrats are always liking therapy over the process. The Republicans say, let's just win and then let the family argue. That is a fundamental difference in how they approach elections. It just is. Democrats want to have a therapy session and discuss the process. If you've ever been to a party convention, you see this. Do we put intifada in the platform or do we not? Do we put genocide or not? As opposed to just win, baby, just win. And then decide what you're going to do. And that's the fundamental difference. It's been that way at least since the late 60s, early 70s. Hi.
Hi, is there any data on the effect of the non-Donnie or?
Like pushing the Democrats to the left?
Yeah.
Down ballot there is. Spot on question. And partly that's because down ballot, as we look to lower level races, what we see are differences in the types of elected representatives. We see this even in California. More persons of color, more Indian Americans, Indians of color, more women or other identity, more African Americans kind of flat, but more other populations, persons of color, and different types of Democrats, to your point. Democrats that are more closely aligned now with Mamdani, but previously were aligned with BS or AOC.
And is there a generational dynamic?
Total generation. Your questions are perfectly insightful. This is city officials by gender, for example, right? The point is not that women have to get to 50-50. There's a thing called critical mass theory, that as they rise to a certain level, they actually put different things on the agenda, okay? Agendize different things, have different, but as they reach parity, everything's about budget and money, and so it doesn't matter. So there aren't this, so what you want to be is in the sweet spot of like 35% or 45%, but not higher. Not that any sane person would make that argument. But that's where we see the differences in the agenda, right? You don't want parity, you want close to parity, or rising. We see the same thing, for example, in terms of types of, this is categorizing, even though we're a local office, what's happening. This is just California, more Democrats, right? But here's Asian Pacific Islander, African Americans. As you can see, the numbers are rising slowly. But it's not just who they are, as you said, it's when they were born, how old they are, and the type of ideology they have. That's all changing. And they're going to Sacramento. I can't believe I did this. More than half of the legislature is termed out by January 2027. From 2024 to 2026, the full effective term limits comes forward. 52% of the legislature turns over. So if you think of younger, different, at multiple levels, it's going to change what's happening. It's going to make the California legislature a big food fight. For Democrats who are in the majority of all those different types of Democrats, exacerbating some of the point you were raising, but also for the types of Republicans as well. There's a lot churning. Let me get her, and then I'm coming over to you. Yeah.
I have many questions, but I'll just ask one.
For $5, I'll let you ask.
Okay. Deal. How do you, with everything that's happening, there's just so much that that's happening with the current administration or even down locally. How do you kind of figure out what is getting to a critical mass that's actually going to be important to affect things like elections and?
So I look at a lot of data. I talk to a lot of people off the record on both sides of the aisle. I have to make that clear. I was talking to a friend earlier this week whose politics are very different than mine, and she runs a team of people who are battling with the people in the administration about what the laws of war are and whether it constitutes a war crime or not. And they've been doing that for a week, and they were hugely effective.
Wow.
They were hugely influential at all levels. And I don't share her politics by any stretch of the imagination, but damn, they were good. But it's because they were involved in what was going on. About half our staff communicate with people in the White House and the DMV. Huge importance in terms of what they're doing. So you have to talk to both sides. You have to talk to people off the record. You have to make people comfortable. And I spent a lot of time analyzing a lot of data. We are in really volatile times. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of judgment is required. And I'm sorry, do you teach? No, I've seen you
No.
before. Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, but have you ever supervised anybody?
A little bit.
A little bit, right? So think of like, and like as parenthood, you gotta let people fail, and then like make sure it's not fatal, right? But you gotta, we teach judgment. That's what we teach. That's really hard to teach. Based and informed by data and some of these things here. But I'm up every morning at 5 o'clock doing it for you. Every morning.
And we appreciate it.
7 days a week. Yes.
What are the issues that are going to get those Republican and independent young men out to vote?
They're probably more economic related, but they're more emotional. They want to back a winner. They want to back somebody who won't back down. And I will tell you, I don't know that that's a Democratic officer. I think that's a sports figure.
Yeah. Reality TV star.
Maybe. I think Democrats are on the wrong track on that in 2028. I think you want Grant Hill. This is my Grant Hill blood. March Madness, I hate Duke. I'm a Kentucky fan. but he's a Rhodes Scholar, part owner of the Atlanta Hawks, and won $250 million a year. He's smart and cool. And you know who's come out for him? LeBron, Curry, Draymond, and every other NBA star, and every other NFL star. That's how you build a winning coalition. Then you have to fight afterwards.
What about
Yes.
Mark Kelly?
Mark Kelly's running. Sure, he's running. And Gavin Newsom's running, and Rahm Emanuel's running, and I think here's what you bring up. It's not enough to say you're anti-Trump. Democrats have to have an answer. And right now they have anti-Trump. They need an answer. That's Kelly's challenge.
How about Governor Bashir, Kentucky?
Sure. I'm less than enthusiastic. I think you have to break the mold. Kelly's the flavor of the month. Actually, no. I would say over the weekend, Cory Booker was down in San Rafael with his books, and he's such a nice guy. He's so nice. That is no decent. That won't work out in politics.
There has been a lot of inflammatory language online. People are very concerned that the midterm elections will just be canceled. We just won't have them, we'll just stop.
Or the people that want to vote Republican will be killed. I have a student who's a Charlie Kirk guy. And he's just convinced that if he speaks out and does his thing, that shit's going to happen. Not in my concern. Correct. That's what.
Since you look internationally, do you think it's very likely to happen?
No. But our friends and allies all over are concerned. Sure. I mean, a talk after the end of May, Amsterdam on Memorial Day, Heidelberg, Germany on Wednesday, Mainz, Germany on Friday, and then I think Monday is Oslo or something. It's just like our European friends are really concerned about what's happening. Yeah, so they want to know what the hell is going on, let alone the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Japanese.
What are your thoughts on, I'm sure, following the whole kind of Jack Schlossberg ruling?
No.
Nothing.
I'm not following you. You gotta tell me.
John?
Come on, let's hear about it.
Well, I'm just wondering, I don't know what the kind of youth is following and watching. Are they, is he building any kind of following?
I was just trying to get you.
Oh, all right. And, I mean, JFK,
Yep.
Junior, anything there?
Yeah. Democrats are looking for what comes next. What generation comes next? Maybe that's Mark Kelly. Maybe. I don't know that it's Cory Booker who's already had his chance. Kamala Harris or, even Grant Hill, right? So they're looking for the next generation. Well, what you're pointing to is how do we get young people involved? I'm going to be more specific. How do we get young men involved? don't have good role models, and they're usually jerks. And how do we build for them things that are hopeful and helpful and show them a path? And those themes are what they're trying to build around the aura at the JFK. But they're trying to build hope, and without that, and with no conflict. And that's the problem. Because I study extremism, remember? So most of the young people I'm dealing with, are pretty comfortable in their extreme behaviors. And they represent a different goal. But Democrats are looking for that. So thank you. I was just trying to draw that out.
Someone mentioned the Mamdani effect, and I was just wondering what that was.
So Mamdani is elected, right, as a socialist in New York City. What do you want to add?
Democratic socialist, he's younger, he's 34.
He's a moonlighting Democrat.
Yeah.
He moonlights in the party, right? And you see this in California with Ro Khanna, right? Who asked about the Epstein files? The effect of the Epstein files, right? So Ro has hit on this thing. I know him because his former comms director is a former student. So this thing, and he is obviously using the Epstein files and trying to take a page to present himself as the alternative to Bernie, because Bernie is 300 years old, and the alternative to AOC. Because AOC is interested in running for Chuck Schumer's seat in New York, because she sees that as a path on presidency, being a New York Senator and kicking Schumer out. So the generational aspect, the generational change aspect is what leads to what's happening. And the governor has tried to illustrate himself as a generational change guy. He's a C-suite tech guy. Tech bro, that's what he is. So Democrats are searching for that next thing. J.D. Vance represented that thing for the Republicans, but he won't hold on to MAGA like Trump. The punchline being, each party is at this generational change moment, and that's why the midterms are so important, the mother of all midterms, because it's not 2024 that matters. It's 2028, because that's where all this gets cast together. So I'll be back before that. Thank you.